Zoom out to the daily. So on the daily, not much has changed here. We're still looking for range lows, mean range highs, right? I think that it's kind of safe to say that that truly is the trend, and everything else is less notable, right? It doesn't really matter too much. It's just kind of we're in a range until we're no longer in the range, right? And once we break out of the range, we can only assume that we're going to continue breaking out of the range in that same direction. So, with that said, 30K is a buy, 41K is a sell, right? We know that. Our daily market structure is actually confirmed bullish. It started as of yesterday, and you managed to find a higher low, and then this was the confirmation where we put in a higher high, and all of a sudden now we have a bullish uptrend on our daily time frame. So that fully agrees with our idea that range lows get tested and then we see range highs follow up after, right? If that means nothing, if our lower time frames start breaking down and all of a sudden it puts a lot of pressure for our daily market structure to hold and for our daily demand zone at 30K, those range lows to hold, it's going to look a lot like complacency. It's going to look a lot like bulls are in denial that this zone is going to give way after continuously being tested and just being bashed over and over and over again, and the norm, the exact same range that we've been accustomed to for the past month and a half is no longer playing out, right? We're now in a different sort of era within the range where now we're lingering around these range lows, and the longer that we linger around the range lows, the more accepting buyers are going to be with price at these range lows, the more likely it is for the range lows to break altogether, right? And see that bigger breakdown. So you really do not want to see your lower time frames start giving way. You really do not want to see a lot of the strength, a lot of the bullish arguments that have been fully put in place the past couple days or so. You don't want to see that fade away, because that likely opens up the door to another leg down into these range lows. And like we said, one, two, three tests of range lows. And that's the only time when we've tested range lows and then not seen range highs follow up afterwards, right? The prior tests were we tap range lows, range highs, right? We tap range lows, range highs, come down to range lows, range highs. Now we're getting range lows, and then we start to see that little bit of a bounce. We get that point of control, like exactly the mid range of the 30% range, and then we test range lows again, right? So you don't want to see just a little bit bigger of a move upwards, but here we are testing range lows again, right? And again and again. And all of a sudden, you get this acceptance. People are no longer willing to um, buy range lows. It's no longer scary, and we're coming down crashing into range lows. And all of a sudden, the people who are buying it get nicely rewarded with a move upwards into range highs. Now it becomes whoever wants to buy range lows, you're more than willing to buy it. Here you go, right? We're going to linger around 30K. We're going to stay there. We're going to consolidate against it, right? Rather than the if you either got in or you're getting in on the move up or you missed out, right? So you don't want to see that. You do not want to see the lower time frame bullish arguments start to fade away, because the context of the situation, and I know I said the context, usually when people try and apply their context of the situation, it tends to not work. They tend to be better off just taking the more simplistic route. And that applies to trends, that applies to ranges, bull markets, bear markets, whatever it may be. But the context of this situation, you do not want to see the lower time frames start breaking bearishly, and you're lingering against this major support level that's been holding you up for the past month and a half. You do not want to see that. So On our 4-hour chart, and we talked about this, we talked about our 4-hour chart is currently uptrending, right? So as long as that remains true, it's going to remain likely that we see our range highs. It's just probability wise, if we're going to our range highs, we're going to have a bullish market structure on our 4-hour chart. That's just the way things work, right? We're going to have an uptrend in order for us to see range highs. So as long as we have an uptrend, there's a pretty good probability that we're going to see range highs again, right? So we talked about this. Yesterday's market update was directly in, I think, this 4-hour candle, right? And in that market update, we said, even though there is no weakness here now, there is no weakness, right? When you're not looking at all of this downtrend, this leg downwards, when you're just looking at this candle, no time frame is showing any sort of weakness. None at all. It's all saying uptrend. It's all saying we're probably going to range highs, right? But we discussed, now that we're bearish retesting the 4-hour 200 moving averages and sort of these 37K pivot level, it makes sense for a pullback to happen. It is logical. Even though there is no weakness, we can kind of assume that the 4-hour 200s, the same dynamic region that has been giving us macro bottoms for the past year and giving us macro tops for the past couple months or so, is probably going to see some sort of a reaction after being tested from the bottom side, right? That's just logical. So it's not that we expected the pullback. It's not that weakness was shown in its uh, probable wise for price to pull back. It's just the simple fact that resistance is resistance, and it's probably going to be respected as such. It's just logical, right? So on the flip hand, if this had just continued this leg upwards and bashed through all of these major zones, we would have just said the trend has remained the trend, right? So resistance is resistance in this scenario because we saw the reaction and we're currently seeing the reaction. We're pulling back. And had we just kept going, it would have been the trend has remained the trend, right? The less speculative people who are just kind of sitting on their hands, they're getting rewarded because the trend, the momentum is carrying through up and above these resistance levels. So for me personally, that's really what I want to see. I want to see the trend hold, first of all, right? Because currently our hourly time frame is bearish, our 15-minute is bearish. All of those lower time frames are bearish at the moment. They are downtrending into some support levels, and we're kind of putting a lot of pressure right now on this 4-hour time frame to hold a higher low, to hold this uptrend and continue it, right? Once we see this, once we see now the 4-hour 200s are getting flipped into support. Remember, the exact same dynamic regions that have been acting as macro tops and macro bottoms for the past year. When you see that happen, that's probably very significant, right? That probably means that you're likely heading up to range highs. And I would assume if you manage to flip your 4-hour 200s, right, all together, the exact same regions that have been giving you macro bottoms for the past bull market, right, the recent bull market, and been the true sign of weakness when broken below and they've been acting as macro tops. Once you see those flipped, I would assume range highs are the very least, right? Like that's the bare minimum outcome from reclaiming the 4-hour 200s. I would assume so. I would think we go to 41K at the very least. At very best, I would assume some sort of resumption of a bull market. I would assume maybe 47K gets hit, maybe 52K gets hit, maybe 59K gets hit. Maybe we break 59K and we start the bull market all over again and this was a macro bottom on something like a year-long time frame, right? Who knows? But That's what I'm really interested in. Once you do that, once you flip the exact same level that has been acting as macro bottoms for the past year back into support, that's a significant event for me. That's nothing to scoff at, right? That would show me a really drastic shift in the trend and momentum and where probabilities lie 2 weeks from now, a month from now, 2 months from now, a year from now, things like that. So that's what I'm looking for. Everything else kind of doesn't matter too much. It's more so 30K, 41K, right? And then what's the trend in the meantime of that? And are we above our 4 hour 200s or are we not? So that's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm looking for. And to kind of go hand in hand with that, our hourly time frame currently holding up the 4 hour structure. So basically, the point that I'm getting at is if we're going to see our 4 hour trend hold, if we're even going to see another test of our 4 hour 200s as resistance, or potentially move up to reclaim them, it would be ideal for that 4 hour trend to remain intact, right? It would be ideal for the uptrend to be sustained. And our hourly time frame is kind of um, setting the ground for where our 4 hour time frame needs to hold and where our 4 hour market structure needs to sort of bounce in order to protect that uptrend. So the hourly 200s, you guys know how much I love these moving averages. Intraday, they're very commonly respected as local tops and local bottoms, right? So really, really useful tool for intraday scalpers. If you guys are trying to get a couple of percentages, scrape some percentages, maybe take some quick long scalps. You enter that morning and then you might be able to exit the next morning or maybe the same night, right? Those kind of trades, intraday tops and bottoms, very consistently. So now we're kind of coming down and bullish retesting them. I know we've seen a pretty decent bounce, 2% in the past hour, but we're coming down, we're bullish retesting these hourly 200s, and it's also where our 4 hour structure needs to have a higher low. You really can't keep going below this. You're going to get a lower low. You're going to break that 4 hour trend. But we also have that 33.7K 4 hour demand zone in that same exact region. So basically, what I'm saying here is this zone needs to hold, or else we open up the gate to potentially come down into these range lows once again for the third time in the past week, right? And now it starts to look like complacency. Now we've officially lost our 4 hour trend. We've broken it. We've lost the hourly 200 MAs, which are consistently local tops and local bottoms. We've lost that 33.7K demand zone. So where do we bounce? Where do we bounce before 30K? And my answer, just like it's been for all of this price action, when I said when we lose 33.7, we'll probably see 30K, right? And then we lose that zone and we see 30K. And then we say, all right, we bearish retested the hourly 200s. So if we break our 4 hour structure and we lose the 33.7K demand zone, we're probably going to break our 4 hour structure. And if that happens, we probably see 30K once again, right? And then we lose the 33.7K demand. So then that leads into us breaking our 4 hour structure. And then all of a sudden, you see 30K once again. There's not much in this region here, right? It's kind of like a void, it's like a black hole. Is not much holding you up and stopping you from testing your daily demand zone, your range lows, for the third time in the past week after not seeing the expected result that you were expecting for the past month and a half, the result that you've gotten used to, which is range lows get tapped, range highs get tapped, right? So seeing that happen, seeing this region lost, our 4 hour structure break, probably opens the door to 30K getting tapped once again, and 30K getting tapped means that 30K has gotten tapped for the third time in the past week and a half, and now it starts to look like complacency. So my personal opinion on this price action is this zone really needs to hold. I'm putting a lot of pressure that this general region needs to give us a higher low, hopefully a higher low, that'd be amazing, but more so just some sort of local bottom for another push upwards, and then we can take it from there. Do we get a lower high along our 4 hour 200s again, and then break our structure from there and eventually break down and then see the whole complacency follow through from that? Or do we continue the uptrend above the 4 hour 200s, above this 37K pivot level? And now it starts to look like we're probably going to see range highs, but we might even break out of the range entirely and see 47K, 52K. And at very best case scenario, maybe we jumpstart the bull market all over again, right? Does that happen, or do we lose this zone and potentially fall into that complacency? So that's where I'm at. So this zone for me is really, really crucial. I'm putting a lot of pressure on this. So that's my thoughts on Bitcoin. And then we'll go ahead and move on. Any questions on that? All right. Someone's mic is not muted. If you guys go ahead and mute your mic for me. Mitch, can you go ahead and mute your mic for me? Oh, yeah. All right. So ETH USD also currently holding an uptrending market structure on our daily, and we managed to reclaim our 200 daily moving averages as well as that 1980-ish supply zone after breaking below it and sustaining price action below it for a few days. And really, this daily analysis is not too much different than the same exact daily analysis that we made 2 days ago. Not much has changed. We're kind of just seeing continuation of Monday's analysis, right? So lower time frames heading up to 4 hour 200 MAs. And we talked about this as well. And we talked about, as long as we're uptrending on this 4 hour chart and as long as our daily agrees that we're in an uptrend, we're probably going to see some sort of move up into the 4 hour 200s once again. Right? It's probably going to be level by level to the upside. And as long as our uptrend remains an uptrend, we're going to break that level, reclaim it, continue the trend upwards into the 4 hour 200s. The 4 hour 200s for ETH are probably more important than the 4 hour 200s for Bitcoin. I would say they have been extremely clean for the past year and a half, really, right? Since March COVID, or March of 2020, when COVID happened and everything kind of capitulated. They've consistently been local bottoms, and when we break below them, they give us local tops, right? Not just local, macro tops. There's a few deviations to that, so this one right here, but eventually you break above, you reclaim, and then that jump starts the next move up, and then macro bottom, macro bottom, macro bottom, a little bit of a bounce, and then crazy liquidation cascade, right? So then on the flip side, macro top, macro top, macro top, macro top, macro top, right? Huge, huge moves from these 4 hour 200s. So seeing them get bearish retested is probably going to give us the exact same result that we're used to. It's probably going to give us, if it's been giving us macro tops, we'll probably get another macro top. So really, any bullish argument, or I'm sorry, any bearish argument, as long as we're uptrending, any bearish argument in between current price and 4 hour 200s for ETH USD is kind of preemptive. Right? It's kind of, it doesn't really matter too much. Your bearish argument, your bearish narrative for ETH USD until we get up into those 4 hour 200s, they're probably going to get crushed because we're uptrending on every single time frame. So if every single time frame is confidently saying, up is the trend and we're going to bounce from here, we're going to hold a higher low, we're going to follow that up with a higher high, all the way up into the exact same region that's been giving you a macro top for the past month and a half, then what's really the point? What's really stopping you from getting to that point where you go on to test your 4 hour 200s once again to see if they're going to act as a local top or whatever? Right? There's probably not too much of an argument for that. So we came pretty close, and just like we did here, you could have made the exact same argument. Maybe this is the high time frame top, and this was the 4 hour 200s getting front ran, and everyone expects it to be a local top or whatever. So they jump in and they sell early. And they start just getting rid of their position from there. And maybe this will be the high time frame top. Maybe we see the lower time frames start to break down further from here, but for the time being, everything still looks about the same. Everything still looks like we're going to continue this move upwards into those 4 hour 200s. And that's going to be the true test. Do they hold up as a very strong top and then break our structure, break our downtrend, or I'm sorry, break our uptrend, and now we formed a downtrend, and it starts to seem like the trend of these 4 hour 200s giving us tops will remain the trend, right? And all of a sudden, they're starting to curl over a lot more momentum, even though they're already curled over. And we can take it from there. We can have that bearish mentality as long as our trend has been broken, right? Or do we just move on to reclaim them as support? And now this looks significant. Now, even though that we're trading lower than we were 2 weeks ago, this price action is now more bullish than this price action would have been, right? That's the way that I'm thinking about it. I want to see the trend no longer be the trend. And what I mean by that is the 4 hour 200s no longer have that opportunity to be a high time frame top because we've reclaimed them as support and now they're a bullish argument. And now things have shifted in terms of probabilities and in terms of momentum, right? That truly is the breaking point for me. That's the line in the sand. I'm going to remain macro bearish on ETH as long as we're still below these 4 hour 200s. And if we have a confirmed uptrend on every single time frame, I probably want to give way to that macro uh, bearish mentality, right? So right about here, I'm going to say, you know what? There's kind of thin air. There's not really much of an argument from here up until we move on to our 4 hour 200s. So I'm going to be a bull in this price action. This cluster price action, I'm a bull. Right here, I'm a bear because I'm expecting 4 hour 200s have been giving me tops. So I'm going to expect another top. And if we reclaim them, then I'm macro bull. I am stupid bullish now. I'm looking at probabilities physically shift in front of my eyes. I'm looking at momentum change. Now the market is different. That's when I jump in on the trend macro wise. So yes, we are uptrending on every single time frame, and right here, right now, I don't think it makes sense to be bearish. Um, if we move on to break down and lose that trend, right, our 4 hour structure gets broken, and now all of a sudden it looks likely that we're going to head back down into 1980-ish again, and we'll look to see if we find a higher low in our daily from there. And if we lose that, then it's unlikely that we will find a higher low in our daily. We can take things level by level, time frame by time frame, domino effect, right? So in this like cluster of price action in between, I see thin air. I don't really see much of an argument until we're up into the 4 hour 200s. But as long as we're still below the 4 hour 200s, I'm not really making too much of an argument for why we might enter another bull market for ETH or why it might see new all time highs a month from now or anything like that. It has to reclaim the 4 hour 200s in order to do any of that stuff. So I'm giving myself a little bit of an edge by just simply waiting for that to happen before getting too antsy on any of those ideas. Right? That's my thought process for ETH. Hourly chart, not sure if there's too much to take note of here. Hourly 200s recently have been pretty solid. Recently, and when I say recently, I mean this whole screen, this cluster price action. been very solid, local tops, local bottoms, similar to what we see on Bitcoin frequently. So if we lose those, right, if we lose that 1980 region, that's kind of, we're breaking our 4 hour structure. We've lost our support levels. Our daily time frame probably won't find a higher low somewhere higher than this low here, right? This is kind of thin air. All in this price action, kind of thin air, nothing really stopping us from heading back down again. So that's really when I say, all right, the 4 hour 200s that almost got tapped, they're somewhere over here. They nearly got tapped. People front ran them and they acted as a top once again. The trend has broken. We're now breaking down. Macro bearish makes a lot of sense. All of our, consistent uptrending time frames that are confidently saying up is the trend, they've all been broken, they've all been lost. We lost support levels. The 4 hour 200s sort of acted as the top once again. So really, what's the bullish argument a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month from now, things like that, right? So the game really changes for me once we get rid of this argument altogether. Once that bearish narrative of, hey, we're still below the 4 hour 200s, they've been giving us macro tops for the past 2 months or so. Once that goes away, things really change for me. All right, so that's ETH USD, and then ETH BTC. ETH BTC, we're seeing buyers at weekly demand are still getting rewarded, right? So congratulations if you are the person dollar cost averaging at major support levels where it makes sense to be a buyer. You're getting rewarded. You took the risk of buying when things look the weakest, but you know that we're at major support. So if things are going to reverse, if strength is going to be shown, it's probably at zones like this, something like weekly demand, 200 daily EMA mixed with daily demand, 200 daily MA mixed with daily demand, right? Weekly demand, on and on and on and on. If you have that mentality of, I'm going to buy, even though we look weak, I'm going to buy because it makes sense at this region to be a buyer, you got rewarded. And that's really all it is. And then our lower time frames start to show some strength. Our lower time frames start to reclaim levels, flip the trend bullishly. Now you're even more convinced that your buy was a good buy, right? Now you're in profit. Now strength is being shown and you're getting rewarded. So that's really all I can say for the daily time frame, or for ETH BTC on a higher time frame. Our daily is still bearish trending, I would say. And so really this is all one lower lows the way that I'm seeing it, but I could also see it lower low and then this is a lower high and then lower low. Right, so there's two different ways that you can see it. I really wouldn't argue with either one. Depending on how I'm feeling one day, I might say this is low, high, lower, low, or I might just say lower, low. So really, it's up to you how to interpret it. Again, I would probably be inconsistent with this kind of thing. I'm not even sure. I think Monday I did say low, lower, high, lower, low. So I think that's the analysis we're going to go with, but really either one is sort of valid to me. So either way that you see it, we're still bearish market structure on our daily, right? So that leaves a lot of room for the downtrend to continue, but it also leaves a lot of room for the bounce to continue, meaning we can bounce significantly higher and still be confirmed bearish, right? Depending on how you see this, depending on how you interpret it, you either see this as high and then this is all one break in structure. So now you're looking for a lower high somewhere lower than here, or you see this as a confirmed downtrend where we formed lower low, lower high, lower low. So now you're looking for a lower high somewhere lower than 0.063. Right. So depending on how you see this, kind of um, dictates how high we should be able to bounce. And if you see it as this one, then you're looking for a lower high somewhere in between current price and this high. Right? And the reason I am going with this analysis is because when we zoom in, that sort of I don't know, analysis makes a lot of sense to me. It would make sense that we find a lower high on the daily somewhere lower than this high right here, right? This is my ideal region to do so. If instead we break out above that zone, maybe we reclaim it, maybe we just see a breakout and it just keeps impulsing upwards into our next resistance. I would want to see a breakout reclaim. And now I'm going to say daily market structure broken bullishly, 4-hour uptrend still perfectly intact, and we reclaimed some major supply zones, right? We reclaimed that 4-hour supply and we reclaimed the 4-hour 200 EMA. So once we see that, I'm going to leave a lot of room for those bullish arguments to run. The trend is the trend. As far as I know, the daily market structure is broken bullishly. That's the way that I'm going to see it. So why wouldn't 4-hour 200 MA get tapped, right? And then we reclaim that, and it's probable that we reclaim that because we're uptrending. We have a bunch of upside momentum. We just reclaimed major levels. So why wouldn't we break that? And then once we do, why wouldn't we head up into zero point zero 0.07, right? And then reclaim 0.07, and why don't we head up into 0.073? And then we reclaim that, and all of a sudden, I'm the one calling for this weekly supply zone to get tapped at 0.033 once again, right? Time frame by time frame, level by level. That's the way that I'm seeing things. So if this zone rejects us, which we're coming up to it soon, it looks like, if this zone rejects us and gives us a lower high somewhere lower than here, right? And then we move on to break our 4-hour structure bearishly, and that can happen in a variety of different ways. It can be lower low then lower high, or it can be higher low, lower high, lower low. If that happens, then I'm going to say this was the lower high on the daily. The analysis that I made that our market structure is like this on the daily chart is the correct analysis, and that is a confirmed downtrend. And I really don't have an argument at that point as to why we won't see this weekly demand zone get tapped once again. Right? So that's where I'm at. It's currently bullish heading up into a major region. Whatever reaction is seen from this major region, whether we get higher low and then continued uptrend, maybe we just never react to this zone at all. Maybe we just catapult straight through it. Or maybe we get lower low, lower high, or lower high, lower low, break in our structure, confirm downtrend. That's going to determine where I think price ends up a week from now, 2 weeks from now, things like that, right? Do we end up at 0.054, or do I expect to see you guys in the next week's live stream at 0.07, right? That sort of zone is going to dictate that for me. So we'll update it. We'll keep things going. Hourly time frame, probably not too much to take note of. Hourly 200 MA has been pretty solid. Gave us a local top mixed with some confluence, and then flipping them immediately saw support and extended up move into the region that we're really truly interested in coming up soon. So hourly market structure still bullish, higher highs, higher lows. So why wouldn't we come up into this zone? Don't know, right? We're uptrending, and then have to see, just like what we said for Monday, or I'm sorry, yesterday, in yesterday's morning update for BTC and the 4-hour 200s. If we break through, if we keep going, it is just simply the trend has remained the trend, right? The higher probability scenario of the trend just continues being the trend that has played through. And if we get a rejection, if we get a pullback, it's expected because we're coming up into major resistance, right? That makes a lot of sense. The 4-hour 200 EMA gave us some pretty solid resistance prior, and now we're lining that up along with a 4-hour supply zone. So it some sort of a reaction, some sort of a pullback makes sense. If that pullback leads into a full-on bearish trend, then it's going to seem like our lower high has been found on the daily time frame, And of course, we know that bearish trends on the daily, lower highs, lower lows. So the next place to head down would be somewhere lower than 0.055, which means we might see this daily or this weekly demand zone at 0.054 tapped once again. All right. So level by level, time frame by time frame, keep your head on your shoulders. Dominance for me, really not too much to say. This hasn't changed. We're going to kind of fly through this. This still scares me. Dominance still scares me. I still see significant room to run. And really, all I'm looking for at this point is our 4 hour 200s. That's what I'm interested in. Are we above them? Are we below them? Are we using them as support? Are we using them as resistance? Are they curled to the upside? Are they curled to the downside? Are they neutral? That's what I want to know, right? Because that has been the go to for dominance for me, and it's done me very well for the past couple of years. Uh, really, just the same exact mentality, not being overly speculative. If we're trending upwards with upwards momentum, I assume up, and then if we don't get up, then I adjust, and it really is that simple for me. I can't really express that enough, right? So nothing has changed here since my Monday analysis, since the Friday before that. Both been very cautious on altcoins, both been very wary of potential extreme upside for dominance, and that's about it. Not much has changed. But like Monday's analysis, we did say if you are bullish on altcoins, if you are heavy exposed to altcoins, you probably feel really good with this price action, right? And the main reason is the hourly 200s have also been really consistent, and trading views not showing it, but these hourly 200s have been consistent local tops, and then we saw them act as local bottoms a few times as well. Right? And then even here, local bottom, local bottom. So now that we're below those hourly 200s, you're probably having some sort of sigh of relief, right? You're probably feeling pretty good about yourself, especially if you allocated into altcoins and heavily exposed yourself to altcoins somewhere in this upper region, right? You're probably feeling pretty damn good. So there's that, right? But you're still above those 4 hour 200s. The bigger time frame trend is still very strongly pointed towards the upside, right? With a bunch of upside momentum. So you have some room to run. You have some room to feel like a genius. Current price down to these 4 hour 200s, maybe even down to this demand zone. All of that room, you're going to feel like a genius. You're going to feel comfortable. And once you really start to feel like a genius is about here, right? Somewhere, something that looks like this. Once you lose all these scary, bigger time frame trends, once you lose those, now you really start to feel like a genius. Now is the time where I'm starting to feel FOMO of I should have been allocating to altcoins, right? Now probabilities have significantly changed. So for the meantime, it's looking pretty damn good if you're heavy exposed to altcoins. It's the start of what a full on breakdown would look like, right? You would have to break down below those hourly 200s. You would have to maybe retest them as resistance, use them as a local top, continue that downtrend, which you are doing all of that. So it looks like what the start of a full on breakdown would look like, but we're not there yet. So I'm not going to assume that we get there. Right? I would rather see it play out and then say, all right, probabilities have shifted. And me personally, the risk to that is I miss out on all of this fun, right? Because I don't flip bullish on altcoins until here or here or here. So I miss out on all of this fun for altcoins that's current price down to, we'll just say in the middle. So 6% drop in dominance. That's altcoins outperforming Bitcoin by 30, 40, 50%, right? So I'm missing out on all of that, but I'm taking the less speculative play in if we're going to break down, if altcoins enter new parabolic runs and see new all time highs in 2021 or whatever it may be, then that has to happen in order for us to do so. This has to happen in order for us to do any of that. So, right off the bat, my take is much less speculative than the person who's betting on that breakdown up here before it happens. And that's a pretty simple concept. I think everyone can kind of wrap their head around that. And that's the mentality that I've been taking. That's the mentality that had me very strongly bullish on altcoins for all of this price action. And so if it works just as well this time around, then I wouldn't be surprised and I would be very grateful, right? Just that simple mentality of the trend is the trend, momentum is momentum. We're using these levels as local bottoms. So as long as we're still above them, there's the chance that we might use them as a local bottom once again. And that's it. And it was the exact same argument, but inverse for the past however many months that Bitcoin dominance was strongly downtrending, right? So my portfolio is going to look really good if I'm right. I'm going to miss out on a lot of that capitulation. And if I'm wrong, then I feel some FOMO. I hop in on the trend later. All right. Couple requests here. Any questions on any of that before I move on? DDP says potential head and shoulders forming on the 4 hour for BTC. Oh, we're already. Maybe. If this is shoulder, head, shoulder, then yeah, I could see it. I will say though, I don't trade these patterns. I think most of you guys know that by now. I don't trade patterns at all in general. Um, Rising wedges, ascending triangles, descending triangles, um, whatever. I don't trade patterns at all. So it really doesn't mean too much to me. But if you do trade patterns, then yeah, I could see where you're looking for that to form. All right, Comp USDT and ADA USDT. All right, so I'm completely disregarding the 200 daily moving averages for comp, just because I don't really have any sort of back testing to do on them. How often are they actually going to get respected? I have no clue because they just got created in January and they've only been tested one, two, and then this is a jumbling of just trading above, below, and in between them. So really can't say how much they're going to get respected. So really not notable to me. Um, As for the daily's actual price action, this is technically an uptrend. This is high, higher low, higher high. So now it's looking likely that this continues up into whatever the trend is. If there's some sort of trend keeping you pushed down, acting as local tops, things like that. Or potentially next, actually, no, we should mark out this zone before I get ahead of myself. So this region kind of looking like some supply. So we have form demand, demand test, demand test, demand test, back test as resistance, and it looks like we back tested the exact same region yesterday. So that's probably where I would have looked for this move up to, I don't know, head up into. And maybe it stops from there, maybe it keeps going. But now that we're here, now that we've already tested it, I don't think there's too much to do. I think it's more so let the higher time frame play out now more than anything. let it come back down, bullish retest this 260-ish region, or let it continue, find some lower time frame strength, continue up above that daily supply, and then we can look for that next leg upwards into 420-ish. But that's where I'm at. It looks like I would have expected, once we confirm that uptrend, once we reclaim that low time frame strength, I'm looking for that next leg upwards into that daily supply zone. Right, I'm looking for that 20% move. Once we've gotten the 20% move, I take my profits, I run away. I look for what's going to happen next. Do we reject? Do we find that lower time frame downtrend and find some sort of top here and then fall back down into this daily demand again? Or do we just keep going and now we're ripping upwards? Now we have a ton of momentum. Now we've reclaimed this region. So now what's stopping us from heading to 420? Right? And then we reclaim 420, and what's stopping us from heading to 500? We reclaim that, and there's truly not too much supply here, maybe 4 hour supply, something like 700, and we head up to there. So now that we've already gotten that push upwards, I would think that any sort of risk reward on any trades that you're going to take in this region are pretty shit. So that's where I'm at. 4 hour 200s, also pretty consistent. Very often macro tops, macro bottoms for this coin when it's very strongly uptrending, and we only have confluence to that idea that this could be some sort of top um, in those 4 hour 200s. So 4 hour 200s get tested, and we have confluence in that daily supply zone also getting tested. So on the other hand, that also means that flipping this region, you now have confluence in support, right? So where you have confluence in resistance, if you reclaim it, all of a sudden you have confluence in support. You now have more bullish arguments on just stacking on top of each other, saying why wouldn't we continue this uptrend into 420-ish, right? Where we have our next daily supply zone. So that's really all I can say for this. I would only honestly be interested in another move down into this daily demand zone. Look for the higher low on the daily from there. And then do we find higher low and then continue that uptrend, eventually move up to reclaim these regions? And now that's a really good long setup. Right? Entry somewhere over here, you can have a pretty loose stop loss. And that's a high probability long setup with a 2.6R risk reward. It's pretty solid. It's not great, but it's pretty solid. Right? So that, or I would look for that push down into this daily demand, maybe just ladder some entries in this daily demand zone, keep my stop loss pretty loose, not trying to call the bottom, just trying to ladder into an area where it makes sense to be a buyer and look for some sort of reaction. And I'm just simply looking for 4 hour 200s and this daily supply zone once again. I'm looking for a hopeful higher high, but since we're uptrending on the daily, I'm going to assume that I can at least get some sort of lower high. So take profit somewhere around here, right? So now I'm looking for plan A, come down here, fill my bids, get some sort of a bounce, at least a lower high, considering our daily tells us higher highs, higher lows to be expected. And then if we continue that uptrend, I can look for another entry. Now we're playing continuation. Now we're playing probabilities. That's the highest probability play that we can make. And I'm just looking for further extended leg upwards into 420-ish. Hourly time frame, I wonder if anything lines up. And it kind of does. Hourly 200 has been really solid. So pulling back down into them only adds to this idea, right? So that's what I'd be interested in for comp, and everything else really is not appealing to me. ADA USDT. All right, ADA USDT, pretty weird chart, honestly. For the most part, this looks like we're in some sort of a range, or at least we were. And this all looks like a deviation, and then deviations see opposite side of range. We nearly got that. And then we kind of just resolved through this range. So now we're not respecting the range at all. Now we're kind of just deviating above and then cracking down below, and then it means nothing. And we see another move upwards and it means nothing. We kind of just dissolve through these range highs. That's why I'm saying this chart looks pretty weird to me. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around this chart right now. Tested 200 daily moving averages. How well do those get respected? And pretty well. Historically, pretty well, even though this was the first test in what, 9 months, 8 months. Um, Market structure also really debatable. You could say low, lower, high, lower, low, and then this is still all one lower high. Or you could say you broke and confirmed a new trend. This is lower high, higher low, higher high. So also not too clear. The daily truly does not help me too much here. I wish it did, but it's just really, it's all clogged up. It's just not clear to me. There's no clear trend. There's no clear structure. Are we in a range? Are we dissolving through a range? I have no idea. So the daily does not really help me too much. The 4 hour 200s do get consistently respected as local tops and local bottoms. So now I've immediately gotten rid of my whole daily analysis. I really don't care what happens on the daily. It could break up, it could break down. I don't have a good read on it, so I'm not really going to try and make an assessment on it. And I can just draw and boil things down to, if we reclaim here, we're bullish. And that's it. If we reclaim the what was once range highs, daily demand, or I'm sorry, daily supply, daily demand, that eventually stopped getting respected. But if we reclaim our 4 hour 200s along with that previous major region, then we're probably bullish. We're probably heading up to 180. 20% move from there. And now I can just ignore all of this price action. It's not clear to me. I don't really see what's happening. Don't have a good read on probabilities, nothing like that. And I can just kind of sit on my hands and wait for this to break out, reclaim some sort of major resistance level into support, and then go long from there, invalidation below. And now it will be pretty obvious that our trend on the daily is bullish at that point, and we do have an uptrending structure from there, and I can just look for continuation. So that's my read on ADA. That's probably one of the worst analysis I've ever given uh, in these streams. But I'm being honest with you. I don't really know what happens. I don't feel like I have a good read on what's going to happen. I don't feel like I have a good read on probabilities. I think if that daily structure is low, lower high, lower low, and this is all still one lower high, this makes sense to be that lower high that we're looking for, right? Somewhere lower than here. And then we continue the downtrend, and now we just break down, and this breaks into some sort of a bear market, right? Or if our structure is instead high, higher, low, higher, high, and we're continuing some sort of uptrend, then we have to reclaim here before we can get too bullish anyways, right? Before we can start some sort of a bull market, before we can start feeling FOMO on ADA, those kind of things, we're gonna have to do something like this in the meantime anyways, right? And then if that's the true analysis, if we're already bullish is the right analysis to be making here, then that's where it becomes extremely obvious to me. That's where I would look in or look to long hop in the trend and look for a continuation of the trend. But until then, I have no clue what happens. So I'll be sitting on my hands, waiting for this to potentially come into fruition. Luna USDT. All right, let's get rid of this fib draw. It's no longer helpful. Let's redraw all of these. So let's keep that one. That one's still getting really nicely respected. Let's redraw. Let's do this. All right, I think that's pretty solid. This might be a very similar analysis to the Bitcoin analysis, mainly because this looks a lot like the Bitcoin chart. Right. So basically, what I'm just looking at is this is range highs, this is range lows. And so once we crack into that range, and we did so on that liquidation cascade, this was over exaggerated. Yeah, obviously we closed this daily candle below, and that looks like we're going to just continue expanding downwards. But we saw the range lows hold, and it's over exaggerated probably because it's less liquid than something like Bitcoin. Um, so deviations are a lot more likely to happen like that. But from that, we got the exact same result that Bitcoin was giving us. We saw range lows get tested, and then we saw range highs. We saw range lows, and we saw range highs. We saw range lows. Didn't quite see range highs this time around. Kind of saw like midway, a little bit more than midway. But then we saw range lows again. And then from range lows, we're getting another bounce. So really, it is just for me, do we break down from the range? Do we sustain this price action below the range? Yes, we did a little bit here, but we deviated. We eventually moved on to reclaim and then bullish retest and then leg upwards. So can we break down from the range, or can we break above the range and then expand towards 13 once again? All right. Currently, bearish market structure, the way that I see it, I won't make the argument that this one daily candle being down is a higher low, but on lower time frames, it probably will be. But for me, I see this as high, low, lower high, lower low. So this is still a lower high. So bearish market structure within the range, the way that I see it, and we'll have to zoom in to see anything more than that. The 4-hour 200s, how well do they get respected? Pretty well, I would say. Not not too bad, right? Pretty consistently local tops, local bottoms. This sort of price action here is the only thing that really throws me off. Just these few candles, but other than that, been pretty solid historically, and we can't really say too much about recently since they haven't been tested at all in the past month, right? Month and a half. So this is the first time they're getting tested, and this is the higher low on our 4-hour that I was referring to. And it looks like we had consolidation on our lower time frames here. We broke down from the consolidation, but then we moved on to find a higher low on our 4-hour along our range lows, and then we kind of just continue that uptrend from there. So looks like we're consolidating on the hourly once again, similar to back here. But I would say our 4-hour structure is still bullish, uptrending. So there's still room to run to find some sort of lower high. So let's zoom in again. Hourly chart. This is the consolidation that I'm referring to. And no, I don't trade patterns, but I know that people love to draw these triangles. It makes things nice and clean. It portrays the idea that it shows the idea that I'm trying to portray, which is this is going sideways as of right now. So just from here, I wouldn't be looking to take any sort of macro play on this. Really, you're only plus EV, and plus EV means expected value. So your only expected value is really down at these range lows, right? If you're willing to make some sort of macro bet, these are the regions where you want to make that macro bet at the range lows. Anything more than that, and now you're sacrificing reward. You don't have nearly as much of a reward for being right as you do around these range lows. So I'm really not interested in making a macro bet in the dead smack middle of the range. I'm just not willing to do so. I'm not willing to say that the mid range is going to see the high side of range, and when you're wrong, you're very wrong. Right? You're long from the mid range, you're looking for the range highs, and we break down, we see range lows once again, and now you're very, very wrong. And you really pay the price for that. Whereas you buy range lows, and even if you only get mid range, you yield a bunch of reward. So your expected value just for seeing a pity bounce from something like range lows is astronomically higher than what it's like to take a swing bet from the middle of the range. Right. So from here, I'm really only interested in scalps. That's it. And truly, it's the kind of scalps that I'm not even personally interested in. But if you were going to scalp this, I would recommend zooming into low time frames and looking for which way does the consolidation break. Do we break in a higher high? Do we reclaim whatever's lingering above us? Maybe it's the 4 hour 200 EMA. Maybe it's something like a 1 minute 200 MA. Do we reclaim that? Do we get the bigger breakout? Do we expand upwards? Maybe just for a couple percent or so. And I'm just going to look to hop in on the breakout, scrape some profit, and get the hell out, and that's my profit for the day? Or do we break down from the consolidation, form a range low, and maybe we just see a little bit more of a downtrend into something like our hourly 200s? And if we lose those, maybe I'll take another scalp short and I'll look for our range lows once again. That's truly only thing I'm interested in. I wouldn't really be paying attention to this chart for anything more than that. And personally, because I'm not that kind of trader, I won't even be looking at this at all, right? That's the only kind of trade that I would be interested in. And I'm not that kind of trader, so I won't be looking at this chart. But you can kind of get an idea for what I mean by this, right? 15-minute 200s giving us local bottoms, and now we're consolidating along them. So if we break down from the 15-minute 200s, that probably means that we're really going to break down. We're going to see that extended move into something like our hourly 200s. So that's a scalp short opportunity. That is, you are zoomed into the 15-minute time frame. You're looking for a really quick breakdown. You have a 1% or 2% stop loss, and you're just looking to scrape some profit in the middle of this 4% move extending downwards. Or do we continue from the 15-minute 200s? Maybe you're looking to play the consolidation. So maybe we come down to the 15-minute 200s once again after finding a lower high, and now you're looking for higher low, right? And lower high, consolidation. So maybe you're just trying to trade the consolidation itself. So maybe you jump in long on what's assumed to be a higher low on the 15-minute 200s, and stop loss below the most recent low, and you're just looking for a lower high. You're just looking for a quick 5% intraday move, just a little pity bounce in between the consolidation. You're not even looking to bet on the breakout in either direction. You're just looking to play the consolidation until it breaks. Right. So same exact thing here. Maybe you can zoom into a lower time frame than this. I don't really think so, but maybe you can, and maybe you can take a scalp short, bet on a lower high, and then bet on the move down into the 15-minute 200s. Things like that. I don't think you're going to get anything like that. So mainly would just be looking for breakdown long, or I'm sorry, breakdown short, breakout long, and longing the consolidation within the consolidation. AVE USDT and YFI USDT. All right. All right, so we have a bunch of cluster here, but I'm going to go ahead and get rid of at least one of them. So it looks like this might be like 4-hour demand, and then I would say the daily demand at 200. So, sorry, excuse me. So I would say this is actually bullish market structure for the time being. As for higher time frame trends, maybe we're still bearish on something like our weekly, but the way that I see this is low, lower high, lower low, lower high, higher low, higher high. So higher low, and then this is a higher high, higher than here. You could also see it like this. This is all one leg downwards, and now this is still a lower high. And in that scenario, you're just looking for a lower high somewhere lower than here. And in my opinion, the ideal place to do that at would be that 280 zone. Not quite focused on the 200 daily moving average. Don't really care about them too much. They just got created 2 months ago. So how much weight can I truly give them for AVE? No idea. But more so the daily demand zone at 283 that has held you up for 6 or 7 months. That's what I'm interested in. Do we reclaim that? Do we back test that? If we back test it, just like how it acted as major support for 6 months, I'm going to assume that it's going to act as major resistance too. So it's not necessarily I'm looking at the 200 daily EMA, but if we have that confluent with that idea, then it's only adding to that bearish analysis. So currently, the way that I see it, we still have some room to run for AVE, but 286-ish is really that breaking point for me. That's the line in the sand. If we're above that, then we can fill out the range that we got used to for the past 6 months. We can fill it out, meaning we can see range lows lead to mid range and range highs, right? That scenario gets opened. That gate of possibility gets opened once you reclaim that 286 region. As long as you're still below the exact same level that's been giving you macro bottoms for the past 6 months, I'm not macro bullish on this. It has the chance to act as a macro top, just has it had the opportunity to act as a macro bottom for the past 6 months. So really not making any sort of bullish argument long term for AUDUSDT as long as we're still below that region. But as for lower time frame, as for trends, still has some room to run. And then honestly, this doesn't really get too much better when we zoom in. The bearish arguments at 286, not current price. Current price, we're just looking for higher low, somewhere higher than 180. So that's not too helpful. We can zoom in further and find something that is probably helpful, but the bearish arguments only pile on at 284-ish region. Now we have our 4-hour 200s, which also have been very nicely respected when we have been trending, right? So not within this range. You can kind of see it starts to get a little blurry here, a little clustered. Now you're just kind of trading above, below, and in between them, not really respecting them. But once you're trending, once you have that momentum built already, bottom, right? And then bottom, bottom, and then back test, top, back test, top, back test, top. So come up here and back test this 284 region, and now you have the 200 daily EMA, which is probably our weakest argument. We don't really care too much about it. The 4-hour 200 MAs, which are consistently respected, and the exact same demand zone for the past 6 months that's been holding up as macro bottoms, all within this general region, potentially giving you a macro top and sending you spiraling for the next week, month, 2 months, year, who knows, downwards. So the only thing that really interests me is buying major demand on the way down and expecting more plummet, right? Being that dollar cost averager, being the, you know what, I want exposure to AVE. I'm going to buy a little bit at 200. and then maybe I'll buy again a little bit more at 123, and then maybe I'll buy a little bit more at 95, and then a little bit more at 80, right? That, and then do we show the strength in the meantime? Do we put in the arguments for what a bounce would look like if we were to bounce into this region at all, right? Do we show those, or do we just continue the downtrend into my major support levels and I can expect my major supports to get hit, right? So the shorter term, I would not be surprised to see this continue up into this region, right? And profit potential is pretty huge because that region is quite far away. Even from current price, that's a 20% move. So there's potential here for some sort of long, but I would only be interested in a scalp long. I would not be looking to buy AVE below this region and bet that I would be able to sell it at $500 anytime soon, right? Just not really probable, in my opinion. But we zoom in, we look for some sort of argument because our 4 hour, we know that that 4 hour chart does not really help us too much. The market structure just tells us, hey, you need a higher low somewhere higher than 180. So now we zoom in and we can see our hourly 200s also get really, really well respected. Very frequently, local bottoms and local tops. Break out above them, reclaim local bottoms, and then break down and nearly local top, local top, local top, local top, right? So if we were going to find a higher low somewhere higher than 180, I would assume it's going to be at these hourly 200s, or maybe at very worst, a wick down to this daily demand, or I'm sorry, yeah, daily demand zone, um, and just holding this general region. That's what I would be betting on if I'm looking for some sort of scalp. So your entry might have been this hourly 200 EMA getting tested. Um, who knows? We won't really know until our hourly market structure flips bullish again. So it did the first step in that process. These are all lower highs and lower lows. Once our hourly structure flips bullish, it's going to look like we found our higher low on the 4 hour chart. And we know that if we were to find a higher low, somewhere in this general region is probably the area to do so. So this is the region to look for our structure flipping bullishly. So we got a higher high. Now if we follow up with a higher low, you start to see some little bit of a reaction. You can probably assume that the bottom is in on the 4 hour chart. The higher low that you're looking for is in, and what's really stopping you from heading up into this region? Really not much, right? It's kind of thin air in between that zone. So now you have a scalp trade that you feel pretty confident in, and you're not even bullish on AVE. You're just looking to play the 20% in the meantime, and that's it. All right, so you go long. Now you get a bullish market structure confirmation on your hourly. Starts to look like you found your bottom on your 4 hour. Maybe your 4 hour gives you some sort of bullish candle, whatever it may be, right? Now you have confluence to an idea that you're going to get some sort of a bounce from this region, some sort of higher low. Even if it gives you a lower high, you'll be able to lock in some profit and decrease your exposure, decrease your risk, whatever, right? And at very best, you see a bearish retest up into this major supply zone and you take your full profit from there. So that's the way that I would play this. I am not macro bullish on this, whatever. I'm not looking to take a swing trade on this at all, but I definitely see the opportunity for if you're a scalp trader and you want to make some profit, this is a pretty good looking chart to pay attention to. Right? Probably going to give you some pretty nice opportunity. So 15-minute. Now we can zoom in even further. You want to pay attention to these lower time frames if you're a scalper. 15-minute chart. The 200 moving averages also pretty solid for this time frame. So now we can say if we break our structure bullishly on the hourly and we can reclaim these 15-minute 200 MAs as support, that probably means we found some sort of bottom. That probably means our higher low on the 4 hour is locked in and we're going to see bounce from there. Right? So now you're only adding confluence to your idea of where should you enter, and then your stop loss is just going to be wherever the last low was. If this is the most recent low, you hide your stop loss below this. Once we break below that, we stop you out. Your idea is invalidated. Right? Your idea that we found a higher low on the 4 hour, that's gone now. You're not right anymore. Now it's starting to look like we're going to head further down, maybe test that hourly 200 MA, maybe test this demand zone, maybe break down from all of that entirely and just continue this higher time frame downtrend, that kind of stuff. So hopefully this is kind of making sense where I'm trying my best to like break things down time frame by time frame because this is really how I trade. YFI USD. Let's see. Gonna delete this fib. It's no longer relevant. Again, not really paying attention to the 200 daily moving averages. More so just paying attention to these levels that we have drawn. So levels pretty well respected, I would say. It's a little bit messy over here, but still pretty solid. And back test them and break down. We lose that demand zone, break down further. Next demand zone holds up, bearish retest. That still holds, see a reaction, then we break through it. Now we're bullish retesting it the way that I see it. So daily time frame, pretty clean. Now we zoom in. Oh wait, could have said daily time frame. Is this still bullish? Or I'm sorry, is this still bearish or did we flip this bullish? You can see it two ways. Either this is all one lower low and we're bouncing into a lower high, or you see lower high, higher low, higher high, and we're already bullish and we're uptrending, and it looks like 39.5 ish is on its way. So different ways that you can see this too. I'm gonna say high, higher low, higher high. All right, 4 hour chart. So 4 hour 200 MAs for YFI, not too bad. It's definitely not as clean as something like ETH or Bitcoin, nothing like that, but pretty solid historically. Pretty good indicators of where you're going to find a local bottom and a local top, right? So if we continue this uptrend, I'm just simply looking for a move up into these 4 hour 200s, maybe into this demand zone, or I'm sorry, supply zone. Just this general region, anywhere in this general area. I'm looking for a strong rejection, right? So our 4 hour time frame is currently bullish, higher highs, higher lows. But just like we said for AVE, doesn't really help you too much. Considering the way that I see this is higher low, and then I see all of this as one extended up move. So this is all higher high to me in my eyes. So your higher low, in my interpretation, is all the way down at 27.8. So I know that I want to find a higher low somewhere higher than 27.8. Now we zoom in and we say, where's the ideal place to do so? And we already know that we're back testing daily demand as support. So that's probably ideal. And if we zoom in even further and we can find any confluence to that idea, then it only adds to our conviction. And we do. Now we have hourly 200s also lined up in this region with our daily demand zone. And we know that we're looking for continuation of our 4 hour trend. So I would say your entry is pretty far gone now because I would have wanted an entry within this demand zone, and I would want my stop loss probably just below the hourly 200s. I think would be fine. Um, and I would assume that if we lose the hourly 200s and we lose this daily demand zone, we're probably not going to find a higher low somewhere higher than here. Or I'm sorry, here. Right? Probably not going to find a higher low somewhere higher than 27.8 at that point. Don't really see any arguments as to why we would. So that's my setup for Wi-Fi. Already gone, unfortunately. If we would have done this stream earlier this morning, then I would have told you this is ideal region. I would be looking for entries, and I would have drawn the exact same long setup that we have right here. So it's still valid. If you want to set bids for this region and take that setup, bet on the higher low on the 4 hour being somewhere in here, betting on the daily demand zone to hold as support, betting on the hourly 200s, which do get pretty nicely respected to hold up as confluence to all of our bullish ideas, and just simply look for that extended up move into this general block of resistance, then that's all you, right? But to me, this already looks like it's gone. We missed the quote unquote opportunity. And yeah. So moving on, ALBT USDT. I've never heard of this. ALBT. Okay. Let's see. Bitfinex, probably not the best. ALBT. Up. KuCoin might be better. All right. DDP, I know you're a lot newer than most of our members. Before we do do an analysis on this chart, I want to say I suck at anything where I don't have price action to work with. I'm a price action trader. I'm a trend trader. If I don't have a lot of price action to look at, then there's really not too much of an analysis to me for me to make. I'm not sure if Bitfinex has more history. Okay, so it does, but it's not much, and this looks less liquid than the KuCoin chart. So you might just be better off doing KuCoin, but yeah, I really don't see too much of an analysis here. What is the Uniswap chart? Oh, I guess I have looked at this before. All right, so we'll run with the Uniswap chart. A lot more price history at the very least. But the rambling that I was going to do is I really can't make too much of an analysis if I don't have a lot of price action to work with. That's true in my trading, and that's true in these live streams as well. So as for daily trend, this is bearish. Someone somewhere is going to be saying Wyckoff distribution, and it very well could be. Who knows? Not me, because I'm not a Wyckofian trader. You kind of need volume signatures, and you have to study all of these like legs in the meantime to really see, is this Wyckoff distribution, or is this just something that traded sideways and then eventually broke down and whatever, right? So someone somewhere is calling this Wyckoff distribution. It could be valid, it could not be, but the point is we broke down from this range and we head down to our a new range, right? We head down to the next major demand zone at 26-ish cents, and that holds up as our range lows, and then we see range highs from there. So range highs are 50 cents, and that is the um, bearish retest of the previous range that we had for all of January through May. Now we're back testing that region. So I would just keep playing the range until it breaks, and whichever way it does break, and I very well would have assumed that it breaks here, like 100%. I'm not a genius. There's no way I see this coming. I assume that it breaks right about here. I assume that we get a breakdown, and that breakdown leads to expansion downwards. I can only assume that. If instead we move on to deviate, confirm a deviation, and reclaim the range, then I would assume that the range is still fully intact, and the norm is range lows see range highs. So why wouldn't I expect range highs once again? If we break down, we get this sort of crazy looking, what should have been expansion, only to crack back inside the range. We're probably going to see mid range and then range highs. So again, I am not the type of person who is willing to swing trade from mid range. I'm not willing to take that bet. I see it as a less of an expected value sort of bet. Right? If I'm putting my risk onto the market, what sort of value can I expect back? And if I'm doing that at mid range, I can expect a lot less than what I expect somewhere down here at these range lows once we crack back inside and confirm that this is, in fact, a deviation. Right? So I'm not willing to make that bet. We'll draw out the mid range really quick. So this is what I'm saying, mid-range. So you're essentially at this major resistance in between your major range. And so really, what is the bet here? It's not appealing to me at all. But we zoom in, and we see that our 4-hour 200s get very nicely respected, consistent macro tops as of recent, and even macro support prior to that. And maybe even prior to that. No, not really. But for a lot of this price action, consistently respecting these 4-hour 200s, so breaking out and reclaiming them is a significant event. If you are long from below any of this price action, you feel very comfortable right now. You are probably feeling like a genius, right? This is exactly what you want to see for the continuation up into range highs once again. But again, for me, not willing to make the bet here, and my stop loss, my risk is we head back down to range lows once again, right? Significant move. 15% just down to range lows, and then truly that's not even my invalidation. My invalidation would be all the way down here below this low. So 24% stop loss. So now if even if we get to range highs, you get 2R. You get 2 return on your risk. So that is why I'm saying this doesn't interest me. Hourly time frame starts to get pretty ugly just because this is low volume. This is an uptrend, and hourly 200s not bad for how illiquid I would assume that this is. Um, I can only really be impressed with how well the hourly 200s get respected, even though it's nothing crazy. But for something that's illiquid and sees these little gaps on something like Uniswap, a decentralized exchange, I'm really only impressed. So again, the bet to make was here or here. When you have this confluence, when you have the hourly 200s getting back tested as support, or once you break out the range after back testing them as support and continuing this 4-hour bullish market structure, those were the bets to make. So if we see these drag upwards and now we get consolidation at mid-range or whatever, something like that, then you can take that scalp long, then you can make that little bit of a bet, because now your invalidation is much tighter. Probability is still not great because you're trying to trade the mid-range, but still, this is a much more appealing setup than anything that I could find right here, right now. All right. Anything else that you guys want from me? Got a couple of requests today. I'm happy about that. Don't want everyone to be afraid of the market. Um, I know I scare you guys at times, but the market is abundant, and we're here to trade whatever direction. It doesn't matter up or down. We're still going to make money. So don't want you guys to be scared. I want you guys to send in these requests. I want you to be scanning the market, looking for the opportunity. Um, but just know when probabilities are in your favor and when they're not, or when the environment's changed, or when it makes sense to just assume that the environment is going to remain the environment. All right. Don't think anyone has anything else for me, so we're going to go ahead and get out of here. As always, I appreciate you guys coming out. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you got some value from today's stream. And yeah, we'll be back again on Friday. So take care, everyone, and I'll see you again on Friday.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, guys.